The Deep Space Survey ship Harmony's Edge drifted through the darkness between stars. Its hull gleamed with a dull silver finish that reflected the distant light of Kepler 442, a yellow star, much like the one that warmed Earth. Captain HFY stood on the bridge, his forearms moving gracefully as he checked the ship's instruments. His insect-like face showed concentration, as his compound eyes scanned the data streams flowing across the main display. The Veltar had been exploring space for over 3,000 years. They were one of the founding members of the Confederacy, a group of alien species that worked together to map the galaxy and share knowledge. HFY had spent most of his life aboard survey ships, discovering new worlds and cataloging the endless variety of planets that orbited distant suns. This mission should have been routine. The Kepler 442 system had been marked on their charts for decades as unremarkable and low priority. 3 rocky planets orbited the star, all supposedly barren and lifeless. The Confederacy had bigger concerns than empty worlds. There were trade disputes to settle, new species to contact, and ancient ruins to explore on more promising planets. But the sensors were telling a different story today. "Captain," called Dr. Kretak from her science station. The female Veltar was smaller than HFY, with bright green markings on her carapace that indicated her specialty in xenobiology. She had joined the crew only 6 months ago, fresh from the Confederacy Science Academy. "I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the 3rd planet." HFY moved to her station with the fluid grace typical of his species. His legs made soft clicking sounds on the metal deck as he walked. "What kind of signatures?" "That's just it, Captain. I'm not sure." Kretak's antennae twitched with confusion. "The patterns don't match any natural phenomena in our databases. They're too regular, too organized. But they're also too weak to be from any known technology." The captain studied the readings on her screen. Waves of energy pulsed from the planet's surface in steady patterns. They were definitely artificial, but they seemed primitive compared to the technology used by any spacefaring species in the Confederacy. "Could it be ruins from one of the extinct civilizations?" HFY asked. "Possible, but unlikely." Kretak pulled up more data on her screen. "The energy patterns are too fresh. These signatures can't be more than a few hundred years old at most." This was interesting. Very interesting. In all his years of exploration, HFY had rarely encountered active technology on worlds that were supposed to be empty. The discovery of a previously unknown civilization would be the find of a lifetime. "Set course for the 3rd planet," he ordered. "All departments prepare for a detailed survey." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. The Harmony's Edge was a modern ship, equipped with the most advanced sensors and analysis equipment the Confederacy could build. If there was life on that planet, they would find it. As they approached Kepler 442c, the readings became clearer and more puzzling. The planet was slightly larger than Earth, with 2 small moons and a thick atmosphere. Most of the surface was covered by vast oceans, with several large continents scattered across the globe. The climate appeared mild and stable. "Captain, this is very strange," reported Navigation Officer Thekmar from his station. "According to our long-range surveys, this planet should be uninhabitable." "Explain," HFY said. "The system's magnetic field is unstable. Every few days, massive radiation storms sweep across the inner planets. Any life on the surface should have been killed long ago." Thekmar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he checked his calculations. "But the sensors show clear signs of vegetation and possibly even cities." Dr. Kretak was running her own scans from the science station. "I'm detecting organized structures on the largest continent, geometric patterns that look like settlements, and Captain—" She paused, her antennae quivering with excitement. "I'm reading biosignatures, lots of them." The main screen lit up with an enhanced image of the planet's surface. Green continents were clearly visible through gaps in the white clouds. As the ship's powerful cameras focused on specific areas, the crew could see what looked like farmland, roads, and clusters of buildings. What species could survive here? HFY muttered to himself. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission," announced Communications Officer Vrelnok. "It's coming from the planet." "Put it through." The bridge filled, with static for a moment, then cleared to reveal a voice speaking in accented but understandable galactic common. The language was used for communication between different species throughout the Confederacy. "Unknown vessel, this is New Sanctuary Flight Control. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." HFY moved to the communications station. "This is Captain HFY of the Veltar survey ship Harmony's Edge. We're conducting a routine exploration mission for the Confederacy. We didn't realize this system was inhabited." There was a long pause before the voice responded. "The Confederacy? We haven't heard that name in a very long time. Please stand by." Another voice came through the speakers, this one older and more careful. "Captain HFY, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez, elected leader of New Sanctuary. We would be honored to meet representatives of the Confederacy. You're welcome to land at our main spaceport if your ship is capable of atmospheric flight. Thank you, Dr. Vasquez. We'll be down shortly." As the Harmony's Edge descended through the planet's atmosphere, HFY felt the familiar mixture of excitement and caution that came with first contact situations. The crew had followed standard protocols, but something about this whole situation felt unusual. "Captain, I'm still not understanding how they survived the radiation storms," Dr. Kretak said quietly. "My scans show that another one is building right now. It should hit the planet in about 6 hours. Maybe they have better shielding technology than we realized," HFY replied, but he wasn't entirely convinced. The spaceport was simple but well-maintained. A large flat area of concrete with several smaller buildings around the edges. As their ship touched down, HFY could see a small group of beings waiting for them near the largest building. They were humans. HFY had heard of humans, of course. They were a young species that had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. The Confederacy had made first contact with them about 50 years ago. From what he remembered, they were still confined to a small area around their home world, slowly expanding into nearby systems, but these humans were supposed to be impossible. The Confederacy's records showed no human colonies this far from Earth. This system was over 100 light-years from human space. "Interesting," Dr. Kretak murmured as she studied the welcoming committee through the ship's cameras. "They appear to be baseline humans, no obvious genetic modifications or technological augmentations." The landing party consisted of HFY, Dr. Kretak, and 2 security officers. As they walked down the ship's ramp, the leader of the human group stepped forward. Dr. Elena Vasquez was a middle-aged woman with graying hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore practical clothes that looked like they had been made locally, rather than imported from some high-tech manufacturing center. Her smile was warm but tired, like someone who had been dealing with difficult problems for a long time. "Welcome to New Sanctuary," she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I have to admit, we never expected to see a Confederacy ship in our skies." HFY carefully shook her hand with one of his 4 arms. The gesture felt strange, but friendly. "Dr. Vasquez, I have to ask, how did humans get here? Our records show no colonies this far from Earth." Elena's expression became sad. "We're the descendants of the colony ship Prometheus. She left Earth over 200 years ago during the early expansion period. We were supposed to establish a research station in the Kepler 438 system, but something went wrong with our navigation computers. We ended up here instead." "The Prometheus," HFY repeated. He searched his memory for any reference to that ship name. "I believe that vessel was listed as lost with all hands." "Lost, yes, but not destroyed." Elena gestured toward the settlement visible in the distance. "Our ancestors managed to make an emergency landing here. They had enough equipment and supplies to establish a basic colony. We've been here ever since. Dr. Kretak stepped forward. How have you survived the radiation storms? Our scans show they should be lethal to most forms of life. Elena's answer came quickly, as if she had been expecting the question. Our ancestors were very clever. They built the main settlement in a valley that's naturally shielded by mineral deposits in the surrounding mountains. During storm periods, everyone stays underground in specially designed shelters. It was a reasonable explanation, but something about Elena's tone made HFY think there was more to the story. We'd be honored to give you a tour of our settlement, Elena continued. It's not much compared to what you're probably used to, but we're proud of what we've built here. The tour was enlightening. New Sanctuary was indeed a modest settlement. The buildings were simple but well constructed, made mostly of local materials. The humans showed them farms where they grew various crops, workshops where they made tools and clothing, and schools where children learned basic subjects. Everything looked exactly like what HFY would expect from an isolated human colony that had been cut off from galactic civilization for 2 centuries. The technology was primitive, but functional. The people seemed healthy and reasonably happy, though there was something in their eyes that suggested they had faced many hardships over the years. How many people live here? Dr. Kretak asked as they walked through the main residential area. Just under 50,000, Elena replied. We've been careful to manage our population growth. This planet can support us, but we can't afford to expand too quickly. What about contact with Earth? Have you tried to send messages? Elena shook her head. Our communications equipment was damaged during the landing. We've never had the resources to build anything capable of interstellar transmission. As the day went on, HFY found himself genuinely impressed by what the colonists had accomplished. To survive on an isolated world for 2 centuries with limited technology was remarkable. The humans had shown the kind of determination and adaptability that made species successful in the galaxy. But Dr. Kretak seemed less convinced. During a private moment while Elena was showing the security officers around the workshop areas, she pulled HFY aside. Captain, something doesn't feel right about this place. What do you mean? Look at these people, she whispered, gesturing toward a group of children playing in a nearby courtyard. They're too healthy, too strong. I've been scanning them discreetly, and their bone density is off the charts. Their muscle development is beyond anything I've seen in baseline humans. HFY watched the children more carefully. They were indeed remarkably athletic, moving with a coordination that seemed unusual for their age. Maybe it's just the result of growing up in this planet's gravity, he suggested. The gravity here is almost identical to Earth standard, Kretak replied. And Captain, have you noticed how quickly they solve problems? Elena asked one of the teenagers to fix a broken water pump while we were watching. He diagnosed the issue and repaired it in under 5 minutes without any diagnostic equipment. Before HFY could respond, Elena returned with the rest of their group. I hope you've enjoyed seeing our little community, she said. Would you like to stay for dinner? We don't get many visitors, and everyone would love to hear news from the wider galaxy. The dinner was held in the community center, a large building at the heart of the settlement. Dozens of humans attended, from young children to elderly residents, who claimed to remember stories their grandparents had told about Earth. The food was simple, but well prepared, made entirely from local ingredients. The conversation was lively and friendly. The colonists asked countless questions about the Confederacy, about new technologies, about what had happened on Earth in the centuries since the Prometheus had left. HFY found himself relaxing, despite Dr. Kretak's concerns. These people seemed genuinely grateful for contact with the outside galaxy. They had been isolated for so long that news of other worlds and species was like a treasure to them. As the evening wound down, Elena made an announcement to the assembled crowd. Friends, Our visitors have given us a great gift today. They've reminded us that we're not alone in the universe. Tomorrow we'll begin discussing how we might re-establish contact with the Confederacy and perhaps even with Earth itself. The crowd responded with enthusiastic applause. Many of the colonists approached HFY and his crew to shake hands and express their gratitude. Later, as they walked back to their ship under the light of the planet's 2 moons, Dr. Kretak remained, troubled. "Did you notice that none of them seemed surprised to see us?" she asked quietly. "What do you mean?" "Think about it, Captain. They've been isolated for 200 years. The sudden appearance of an alien starship should have been the most shocking event in their history. But everyone we met treated it like they had been expecting us." HFY considered this as they reached the Harmony's edge. "Perhaps they've always hoped that someone would find them eventually." "Maybe," Kretak said, but she didn't sound convinced. As the Veltar crew settled in for the night, none of them noticed the almost invisible sensors that had been tracking their every movement since they landed. Deep beneath New Sanctuary, in facilities that didn't appear on any surface scans, other humans were analyzing every word the aliens had spoken and every scan they had performed. The colonists had indeed been expecting visitors. They had been monitoring galactic civilization for decades, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. But not like this. Not yet. Elena Vasquez stood in her true office, located 50 meters underground in a complex that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Banks of advanced computers surrounded her, displaying information about the Veltar ship and its crew that the aliens would have been shocked to know existed. "Status report," she said to her chief of security. "All surveillance devices are functioning normally. The aliens suspect nothing beyond what Dr. Kretak has already observed. Their scans have not penetrated below the first sublevel." Elena nodded. "Good. How long before the next radiation storm?" 4 hours and 17 minutes. "Perfect. Make sure our guests see how we take shelter during the storm. It should reinforce their assumptions about our technology level." As the radiation storm built in the planet's magnetosphere, the Veltar crew prepared to witness how a primitive human colony survived one of the galaxy's most dangerous natural phenomena. They had no idea they were about to see a carefully orchestrated performance designed to hide the truth about what New Sanctuary really was. The warning sirens began to wail across New Sanctuary just before dawn. Captain HFY and his crew were awakened by the urgent sound echoing through their ship's hull. Dr. Kretak was the first to reach the bridge, her compound eyes already focused on the sensor displays. "The radiation storm is approaching faster than predicted," she announced as the others joined her. "Energy levels are climbing rapidly." Through the ship's viewports, they could see the colonists moving with practiced efficiency. People emerged from buildings carrying emergency supplies and heading toward what appeared to be reinforced structures built into the hillsides around the settlement. There was no panic, no confusion. Everyone seemed to know exactly what to do. Elena Vasquez's voice came through their communications system. "Captain HFY, please prepare your ship for the storm. If you'd like to observe our shelter procedures, you're welcome to join us in the main refuge." HFY was curious about how these primitive humans survived what his instruments showed as a truly massive radiation event. "We'd be honored to join you, Dr. Vasquez." The main refuge was carved into the hillside behind the settlement. As they walked toward it with Elena and several other colonists, HFY noted the thick metal doors and the complex ventilation systems that had been built into the rock face. "This is impressive engineering for your technology level," Dr. Kretak commented. Elena smiled modestly. "Our ancestors were very thorough planners. They knew this planet was dangerous, so they made sure we'd be able to survive here." Inside the refuge, hundreds of colonists had gathered in a large underground chamber. The walls were lined with supplies, medical equipment, and entertainment systems to keep people occupied during the storm. Children played quietly in designated areas while adults checked equipment and monitored radiation levels on simple displays. How long do these storms typically last? HFY asked. Usually between 6 and 12 hours, Elena replied. This one looks like it might be on the shorter side, but we never take chances. As the radiation levels outside climbed to lethal intensities, HFY found himself genuinely impressed by the colonists' calm professionalism. They had turned a deadly natural disaster into a routine part of their lives. It spoke well of human adaptability and planning. But Dr. Kretak was paying attention to different details. She noticed that the radiation monitors inside the shelter showed readings that didn't quite match what her own instruments were detecting. The differences were small, but they were consistent. She also observed that many of the colonists seemed remarkably unconcerned for people who were supposedly hiding from a life-threatening event. "Dr. Vasquez," she said during a quiet moment, "could you tell me more about how your ancestors first survived these storms? The early years must have been very difficult." Elena's answer came smoothly, as if she had told this story many times before. The first generation lost a lot of people before they figured out the proper shielding techniques. They tried building above ground initially, but the radiation was too intense. It wasn't until they discovered the natural mineral deposits in these hills that they realized they could create effective shelters. "What kind of minerals?" Kretak pressed gently. "Mostly iron compounds with some rare earth elements mixed in. Nothing too exotic, but when properly arranged, they create an effective barrier against the radiation." It was a plausible explanation, and Elena delivered it with conviction. But something about the way she avoided looking directly at Kretak while speaking made the Veltar scientist suspicious. When the storm finally passed and the all-clear signal was given, the colonists emerged from their shelters and immediately began returning to their normal activities. There was no checking for radiation exposure, no decontamination procedures, no medical examinations. They simply went back to work as if nothing had happened. Over the next several days, the Veltar crew was given extensive tours of the colony. They visited the farms where the humans grew their food, the workshops where they manufactured tools and equipment, and the schools where children learned about mathematics, science, and colonial history. Everything they saw reinforced the image of a struggling but determined community making the best of a difficult situation. The technology was simple but effective. The people were hardworking and resourceful. The leadership was competent and focused on the community's survival. HFY found himself developing a genuine respect for what the colonists had accomplished. To build a thriving settlement with limited resources on a hostile world was no small achievement. He began composing reports in his mind about how the Confederacy might provide assistance to help these isolated humans reconnect with the wider galaxy. But Dr. Kretak's doubts continued to grow. She noticed that the colony's power systems were more efficient than they should have been. The fusion reactors that provided electricity were supposedly built from salvaged ship components, but they operated at efficiency levels that exceeded most Confederacy designs. She observed that the colonists' agricultural yields were far higher than should have been possible with their claimed technology. The plants grew too fast, produced too much food per acre, and showed resistance to diseases that should have devastated crops grown with primitive farming methods. Most disturbing of all, she began to realize that the colonists' physical capabilities were beyond anything she had ever seen in baseline humans. They were stronger, faster, and more coordinated than any unmodified biological species she knew of. When she discreetly scanned some of the children during a school visit, her instruments showed bone density and muscle development that should have been impossible. "Captain," she said privately as they prepared for another day of touring the colony, "I need to share some concerns with you." HFY listened as she detailed her observations. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "What are you suggesting, Doctor?" he finally asked. "I'm not sure yet, but I don't think these people are telling us the complete truth about their situation. They're primitive humans struggling to survive on a hostile world. What else could they be?" Kretak didn't have a good answer to that question, but her scientific instincts told her that something important was being hidden from them. That afternoon, Elena took them to visit the colony's historical museum. It was housed in one of the older buildings near the center of the settlement, filled with artifacts from the original Prometheus and displays showing how the colonists had developed their technology over the centuries. This is the original navigation. "Computer from our ship," Elena explained, pointing to a large, obviously damaged piece of equipment. "The malfunction that brought us here instead of our intended destination." HFY examined the device with interest. It was clearly human technology from 2 centuries ago, primitive by current standards but functional for its time. "Have you ever tried to repair it?" "Our technicians have looked at it over the years, but the damage is too extensive. We'd need replacement parts that we simply can't manufacture here." Dr. Kretak studied the computer more carefully. Her training in xenobiology included extensive knowledge of different species' technologies, and something about this device bothered her. The damage patterns looked wrong somehow, too clean and too precisely located to be the result of a random malfunction. "Dr. Vasquez," she said, "could I take some detailed scans of this computer? I might be able to help your technicians understand exactly what went wrong." Elena hesitated for just a moment before nodding. "Of course. Any assistance would be appreciated." As Kretak ran her scanner over the device, she discovered something interesting. The computer's memory cores were still partially intact. If she could access them, she might be able to reconstruct the ship's original flight plan and understand what had really happened to the Prometheus. But when she tried to connect her scanner to the computer's data ports, Elena quickly intervened. "I'm sorry, but our technicians have asked us not to let anyone access the computer's memory systems directly. They're worried that any additional electrical activity might damage what's left of the data." Another reasonable explanation, but Kretak was starting to notice a pattern. Every time she tried to look deeper into the colony's technology or history, Elena found a polite but firm way to redirect her attention elsewhere. That evening, the Veltar crew was invited to attend a community meeting where the colonists would discuss their future relationship with the Confederacy. The meeting was held in the same community center where they had shared dinner on their first night. Elena stood before the assembled crowd and spoke about the opportunities that renewed contact with galactic civilization might bring. She talked about trade possibilities, technological exchange, and the chance for some colonists to visit other worlds for the first time in their lives. The crowd listened with obvious enthusiasm. Many people stood up to ask questions about life in the Confederacy, about other species they might meet, and about what it would take to establish regular contact with the outside galaxy. "We've been isolated for so long," said one elderly man. "It would be wonderful to know that our children might have opportunities beyond this single world." "What kind of assistance could the Confederacy provide?" asked a. "The Confederacy has extensive programs to help isolated colonies integrate with the wider galaxy," HFY assured her. "There are protocols for gradual contact, cultural exchange programs, and economic assistance packages." "That's very reassuring. When do you think we might expect the first official contact mission?" HFY thought about the bureaucratic processes involved. "Probably within 6 months to a year. First contact situations require careful planning and approval from multiple departments." Elena nodded. "We'll be ready whenever they arrive." As the Veltar crew prepared to leave New Sanctuary the next morning, Elena and a large group of colonists gathered at the spaceport to see them off. There were many handshakes, expressions of gratitude, and requests to carry messages to the Confederacy about the colony's needs and hopes. "Thank you for everything," Elena said, as she shook HFY's hand one final time. "You've given us something we haven't had in generations. Hope for the future." As the Harmony's Edge lifted off and climbed toward orbit, HFY felt satisfied with their mission. They had discovered a lost human colony, established friendly contact, and gathered the information needed to help the Confederacy provide appropriate assistance. But Dr. Kretok remained troubled. As she watched New Sanctuary shrink away below them, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had seen only what the colonists wanted them to see. "Captain," she said quietly, "I'd like to request permission to conduct one final sensor sweep of the planet before we leave the system." "What are you looking for?" "I'm not sure. But something about this whole situation doesn't feel right to me." HFY considered her request. Kretok was young and inexperienced, but she was also brilliant and thorough. If she had concerns, they were worth investigating. "Very well, conduct your sweep." As the ship moved into a high orbit around Kepler 442c, Kretok began the most detailed scan she could manage with their equipment. She focused on areas away from the main settlement, looking for anything that might have been hidden from their surface visits. For several hours, she found nothing unusual. The planet appeared exactly as the colonists had described it, a mostly natural world with a single small settlement and basic infrastructure. But then, as her sensors swept across the southern continent, she detected something that made her antennae twitch with excitement. "Captain, you need to see this." HFY hurried to her station and looked at the display. Deep underground, hundreds of kilometers from New Sanctuary, the sensors were detecting what appeared to be artificial structures. Large artificial structures. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "I'm not entirely sure," Kretok replied. "But whatever it is, it's definitely not natural. And Captain, it's huge." The structures appeared to extend for dozens of kilometers in every direction, far larger than anything they had seen at New Sanctuary. The energy signatures were faint, but clearly technological in origin. "Could it be ruins from an ancient civilization?" HFY suggested. Kretok shook her head. "The energy patterns are too fresh. Whatever this is, it's active." As they watched, more details became clear. The underground complex was connected to the surface by what appeared to be a sophisticated transportation system. There were power conduits, data networks, and other infrastructure that spoke of advanced engineering. "Captain," Kretok said, quietly, "I don't think the colonists told us the truth about their technology level." Before HFY could respond, the ship's communication system activated. Elena Vasquez's voice filled the bridge. But there was something different about her tone. The warmth and humility were gone, replaced by something much more businesslike. "Captain HFY, I believe your Dr. Kretok has discovered something interesting. I think it's time we had a more honest conversation." Captain HFY felt his blood run cold at Elena's words. The bridge of the Harmony's edge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Dr. Kretok's compound eyes were fixed on her scanner displays, watching the massive underground. "Structures that should not have existed?" "Dr. Vasquez," HFY said carefully, "how are you able to communicate with us at this distance? Our records show that your colony doesn't have interstellar communication equipment." Elena's laugh came through the speakers, and it was not the warm, tired sound they had heard before. It was sharp and knowing. "Our records show many things that aren't entirely accurate, Captain. Perhaps you should return to the surface so we can discuss this properly." HFY looked at his crew. Navigation Officer Thekmar had all four of. His eyes focused on the tactical display, clearly worried about potential threats. The security officers had moved closer to their weapons stations. Even the usually calm Dr. Kretok was showing signs of stress, her antenna twitching rapidly. "With respect, Dr. Vasquez, I think we'll remain in orbit for now." "As you wish." Elena's voice remained pleasant, but there was an edge to it now. "But I should point out that your ship is currently surrounded by detection systems that have been tracking your every movement since you entered this system. We know exactly where you are and what you're doing at all times." Thekmar quickly activated the ship's sensor array, scanning for any signs of tracking devices or hidden technology. His face grew pale as data flooded his displays. "Captain," he whispered, I'm detecting at least 47 different scanning beams focused on our ship. They're using sensor technology I don't recognize. Where are they coming from? Everywhere. The planet's surface, the moons, several positions in space that show no visible structures. Thekmar's voice was shaking slightly. Captain, these aren't primitive sensors. This is more advanced than anything in our databases. Dr. Kretok was running her own scans of the underground complex. As she increased the power and resolution of her instruments, more details became visible. What she saw made her question everything they thought they knew about human technology. Captain, you need to see this. Her voice was barely a whisper. So, main display lit up with a three-dimensional map of the structures beneath the southern continent. They weren't just buildings. They were a vast network of interconnected facilities that stretched across thousands of square kilometers. The complex included what appeared to be manufacturing centers, research laboratories, power plants, and transportation hubs. But most shocking of all were the energy readings. The power output from the underground facilities was enormous, far beyond anything that should have been possible with the technology the colonists had shown them. Those fusion reactors we saw at the settlement, Kretok said slowly, they weren't powering the colony. They were decoys. The real power source is down there. Elena's voice came through the speakers again. Dr. Kretok is quite perceptive. Yes, the reactors at New Sanctuary are functional, but they're mainly for show. Our actual power needs are met by systems that operate on principles your science has not yet discovered. HFY felt the situation spinning out of control. Dr. Vasquez, what exactly are you saying? I'm saying that the story we told you about the lost colony ship was true, but incomplete. The Prometheus did arrive here 2 centuries ago, and our ancestors did establish a settlement, but they didn't come here by accident, and they weren't just colonists. The main display changed to show historical records that the ship's computers had never seen before. Images of the Prometheus revealed that it had been equipped with far more advanced technology than any Earth ship from that time period should have possessed. The Prometheus was part of a classified Earth program called the Human Advancement Initiative, Elena continued. Its mission was to establish research facilities beyond the observation of Earth's government and the galactic community, places where human scientists could push the boundaries of knowledge without ethical constraints or political interference. Dr. Kretok's scanner was now detecting additional underground complexes on other continents. Each one was enormous, clearly the result of centuries of construction and development. How many facilities are there? She asked. On this planet? 17 major research complexes. But Kepler 442c isn't the only world where the initiative established operations. HFY's mind was reeling. You're telling us there are other hidden human colonies? Not colonies, Captain. Research stations. And yes, there are others. Quite a few others, actually. Elena's tone was becoming more businesslike by the moment. We've been monitoring galactic civilization for decades. We know about every major technological development, every political crisis, every military movement across the entire Confederacy. The implications were staggering. If humans had been secretly observing the galaxy for decades without anyone knowing, what else might they be capable of? Dr. Vasquez, HFY said, trying to keep his voice steady, why are you telling us this now? Because Dr. Kretok's curiosity has made it impossible to maintain the deception any longer. And because it's time for the next phase of our operations, anyway. Before anyone could ask what she meant by that, the ship's sensors detected something new. Energy signatures were appearing all around them. Not scanning beams this time, but something much more powerful. Captain, Thekmar reported, his voice tight with fear. I'm reading massive energy buildups at multiple points around the planet. Whatever they're powering up, it's big enough to crack a moon. Those are our defense systems, Elena explained calmly. Don't worry, they're not targeted at you. We're simply making sure you understand the situation you found yourself in. Dr. Kretok was frantically trying to analyze the energy signatures. What she found defied everything she thought she knew about physics. Captain, these aren't conventional weapons. The energy patterns suggest they're manipulating space-time itself. This is technology that exists only in theoretical papers written by our most advanced scientists. Not just theoretical anymore, Elena said. We've been working on practical applications for over a century. The main display changed again, this time showing detailed specifications for weapons and defensive systems that were decades ahead of anything the Confederacy possessed. Faster-than-light missiles that could strike targets in other star systems. Energy shields that could deflect entire solar flares. Gravity manipulation devices that could move planets. This is impossible, HFY muttered. No species in the galaxy has technology like this. No species except humans, Elena corrected. We've had certain advantages in our research that other species lack. What kind of advantages? For one thing, we're not constrained by the ethical guidelines that limit research in the Confederacy. When your scientists worry about the moral implications of dangerous experiments, our scientists simply move their work to isolated facilities where such concerns don't apply. Dr. Kretak was studying biological scans of the planet's population. What she found was even more disturbing than the advanced technology. Captain, the humans down there, they're not baseline humans anymore. Every single person I'm scanning has been extensively modified at the genetic level. Enhanced strength, intelligence, longevity, disease resistance, they've turned themselves into a completely different species. Not different, Elena said. Improved. We've spent 2 centuries pushing human potential to its absolute limits. Every person in our settlements represents the pinnacle of what biological intelligence can achieve. The scanner was showing impossible readings. Humans with lifespans, measured in centuries. Children with intelligence that surpassed the greatest minds in the Confederacy. Adults who could interface directly with computer systems using biological neural implants. You've been experimenting on your own people, HFY said, horrified. We've been improving our own people, Elena corrected. Every modification is voluntary, and every enhancement makes us more capable of advancing human knowledge and capability. To what end? To ensure that humanity takes its rightful place as the dominant species in the galaxy. The words hung in the air like a threat. HFY had encountered many species during his career, some aggressive and some peaceful, but he had never heard anyone speak so casually about galactic dominance. The Confederacy is built on cooperation between species, he said. There's no need for anyone to be dominant. The Confederacy is built on stagnation, Elena replied. Your member species have been using the same basic technologies for thousands of years. You've stopped pushing boundaries, stopped taking risks, stopped growing. You've become comfortable with mediocrity. Dr. Kretak was scanning deeper into the planet's structure. What she found made her antenna quiver with shock. Captain, there's something else down there. Some kind of massive computer system. It's connected to the entire planet. The processing power is beyond anything I've ever seen. That's our planetary intelligence network, Elena explained. Every person in our settlements is connected to it through neural implants. We share knowledge, coordinate research, and make decisions as a unified intelligence rather than as individuals. The concept was terrifying to the Veltar, who valued individual thought and independence above almost everything else. The idea of an entire species connected through artificial neural networks suggested a level of technological integration that bordered on the inhuman. You've turned yourselves into machines, Tekmar said with disgust. We've turned ourselves into something better than what we were, Elena replied. Individual humans are limited by the capacity of a single brain and the short span of a single lifetime. Connected humans can access the accumulated knowledge and experience of our entire species. The ship's communications officer, Vrelnok, had been quietly monitoring transmissions throughout the conversation. Now he spoke up with obvious fear in his voice. Captain, I'm detecting communication signals leaving this system. They're using quantum entanglement transmission, instantaneous communication across galactic distances. Who are they signaling? I can't decode the transmissions, but they're being sent to at least 16 different star systems. Elena's voice confirmed their worst fears. We're informing our other facilities that first contact protocols are no longer necessary. It's time to move to the next phase of the initiative, which is open contact with galactic civilization, but not as junior partners asking for help, as the species that will guide the galaxy into a new age of advancement and discovery. The energy readings around the planet were continuing to climb. Whatever the humans were preparing to do, it would require enormous amounts of power. Dr. Vasquez, HFY said desperately, the Confederacy can work with humanity. There's no need for conflict. There won't be conflict, Captain. The Confederacy will simply accept humanity's leadership, just as they'll accept the improvements we'll make to their species and their societies. You're talking about conquest. I'm talking about evolution. Forced evolution, if necessary, but evolution nonetheless. Elena's voice had lost all pretense of warmth now. The galaxy has been stagnant for too long. It's time for change. Doctor, Kretak's scanners detected new activity in the underground complexes. Massive machines were activating, systems that had been dormant for decades were coming online, and energy was being channeled toward purposes she couldn't identify. Captain, whatever they're doing down there, it's something they've been preparing for a very long time. This isn't a spontaneous decision. This is a plan that's been in motion for decades. Longer than that, Elena said. The Human Advancement Initiative has been preparing for this moment for over 2 centuries. Every research project, every enhancement, every technological breakthrough has been designed to give humanity the tools needed to reshape galactic civilization. The main display showed images from across the planet. The simple agricultural settlement they had visited was transforming before their eyes. Buildings were retracting into the ground to reveal advanced technology. Vehicles were emerging from underground hangars. People were donning equipment that looked more like powered armor than clothing. The new sanctuary you visited was a stage set, Elena explained. A carefully constructed facade designed to make you see what we wanted you to see. The real settlement has capabilities that would have been difficult to explain as the work of primitive colonists. As if to demonstrate her point, the simple spaceport where they had landed began to reconfigure itself. The concrete landing pad split apart to reveal a sophisticated facility with multiple launch bays, defensive weapons, and scanner arrays that rivaled anything the Confederacy had built. Our ship, Thekmar said quietly. While we were on the surface, they could have done anything to our ship. Elena laughed. We could have, but we didn't need to. Your ship is primitive compared to our current technology. If we wanted to disable or destroy it, we wouldn't need to sneak aboard. We could do it from here. To prove her point, the Harmony's Edge suddenly lost power to all non-essential systems. The lights dimmed, the environmental controls stopped working, and half the instrument panels went dark. That's just a demonstration, Elena said as the ship's systems came back online moments later. We can shut down any system on your ship remotely whenever we choose to do so. Dr. Kretak was running continuous scans, trying to understand how the humans had gained so much power over their ship. What she found was impossible to accept. Captain, they're manipulating our systems at the quantum level. They're not just hacking our computers. They're controlling the fundamental particles that make up our technology. The implications were staggering. If humans could manipulate matter at the quantum level, they possessed technology that was centuries ahead of anything in the Confederacy. How? HFY asked. Trial and error, Elena replied. Lots of trial and error over many generations. When you're not limited by ethical constraints or safety regulations, you can attempt experiments that other species wouldn't dare to try. How many people died in those experiments? Fewer than you might think. One of our earliest breakthroughs was in medical technology. We can repair almost any injury, cure almost any disease, and extend human life indefinitely. Death became optional for us a very long time ago. As the conversation continued, the true scope of human advancement became clear. They had not just improved their technology. They had transformed themselves into something that barely resembled the species the Confederacy had first contacted 50 years ago. And now they were preparing to introduce themselves to the galaxy in their true form. The transformation of New Sanctuary was complete. What had appeared to be a simple agricultural settlement now revealed itself as a technological marvel that defied everything the Veltar crew thought they knew about human capabilities. Buildings rose from underground installations, their surfaces gleaming with materials that seemed to bend light around them. The sky above the settlement filled with aircraft that moved without any visible means of propulsion, silent and graceful as they patrolled the area. Impressive, isn't it? Elena's voice came through the ship's communications system. Would you like to see the real New Sanctuary? I think it's time we dropped all pretenses. Captain HFY looked around his bridge at his increasingly frightened crew. They were clearly outmatched by technology they didn't understand, surrounded by weapons they couldn't defend against, and dealing with humans who were apparently not human anymore in any meaningful sense. Dr. Vasquez, he said carefully, what do you want from us? Honestly, nothing at all. You've served your purpose simply by finding us. Your discovery has given us the excuse we needed to move forward with plans that have been in development for decades. Dr. Kretak was studying the energy patterns emanating from the planet below. Captain, the power output from their facilities is still climbing. Whatever they're preparing to do, it's going to require enormous amounts of energy. We're charging our interstellar communication arrays, Elena explained. It takes quite a bit of power to send quantum-entangled messages simultaneously to 17 different star systems. 17 other colonies? HFY asked. 17 other research facilities, each one specializing in different aspects of human advancement. Biological enhancement, artificial intelligence, weapons development, temporal mechanics, dimensional manipulation. The list goes on. The main display on the ship's bridge suddenly activated without anyone touching the controls. Elena's face appeared on the screen, but she looked nothing like the tired middle-aged woman they had met on the surface. Her eyes gleamed with an inner light that suggested direct neural interface with computer systems. Her skin had a subtle luminescence that indicated extensive biological modifications. When she moved, it was with inhuman precision and grace. This is what we really look like, she said, gesturing to herself. The woman you met on the surface was wearing biological camouflage designed to make me appear baseline human. We've found that other species react badly to seeing us in our true form. You look... Dr. Kretak struggled to find words. You look like something out of a nightmare. Elena laughed, and the sound was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. We look like the future, Doctor. This is what intelligent life becomes when it stops accepting limitations and starts embracing possibilities. The view on the screen expanded to show the interior of what was clearly a massive command center. Dozens of enhanced humans moved between stations that controlled technology the Veltar crew couldn't even identify. Some of the humans appeared to be interfacing directly with the computers through neural implants. Others seemed to be manipulating holographic displays with their bare hands. How many people are connected to your network? Tekamar asked, his voice barely a whisper. Everyone, Elena replied simply. Every human in every facility across the galaxy. We are no longer individuals in the way you understand the concept. We are nodes in a vast intelligence network that spans dozens of star systems. That's not evolution. HFY said with disgust. That's the destruction of everything. That makes you human. Is it? Elena tilted her head in a gesture that was eerily mechanical. We still think, feel, and create. We still form relationships and pursue goals. We've simply transcended the limitations of individual consciousness. When one of us learns something, we all learn it. When one of us solves a problem, we all benefit from the solution. Dr. Kretak was running deep scans of the planetary network. What she found was beyond anything she had imagined possible. Captain, their network isn't just sharing information, it's sharing consciousness itself. They're not just connected to the same computers, they're sharing the same thoughts, the same memories, the same experiences. The same purpose, Elena added. Which brings us to why we've decided to reveal ourselves now. The display changed to show a map of the galaxy with dozens of markers indicating the locations of human research facilities. Most of them were in systems that the Confederacy had marked as uninhabited or uninteresting. For 2 centuries, we've been watching galactic civilizations stagnate. Your member species have incredible potential, but you've become comfortable with mediocrity. You use the same technologies your ancestors developed thousands of years ago. You avoid dangerous research because you're afraid of the consequences. You've stopped growing. We've learned wisdom, HFY replied. Some knowledge is too dangerous to pursue. All knowledge is dangerous if you're not prepared to handle it responsibly. But that doesn't mean you should stop pursuing it. It means you should develop better ways to handle the dangers. Elena gestured, and the display showed examples of human technological achievements. Weapons that could destroy entire solar systems, medical technology that could bring the dead back to life, computers that could simulate entire universes, transportation, systems that moved through dimensions that existed outside normal space-time. We've spent 2 centuries developing better ways to handle dangerous knowledge. We've enhanced our intelligence so we can understand complex problems more clearly. We've extended our lifespans so we can see the long-term consequences of our actions. We've connected our minds so we can make decisions based on the collective wisdom of our entire species. You've turned yourselves into monsters, Dr. Kretak said. We've turned ourselves into gods, Elena corrected. And now we're ready to help the rest of the galaxy follow the same path. The energy readings from the planet were reaching levels that threatened to overload the Harmony's Edge's sensors. Whatever the humans were preparing to do, it would happen soon. What exactly are you planning? HFY asked. Elena's expression became serious. We're going to make contact with every major government in the Confederacy simultaneously. We're going to reveal our true capabilities and offer to share our technology and knowledge. And if they refuse, they won't be given that option. Elena's voice carried a note of finality that chilled the Veltar crew. The galaxy has been stagnant for too long. It's time for forced evolution. The main display showed images from across the galaxy as human ships emerged from hidden bases in dozens of star systems. They were unlike anything the Confederacy had ever seen. Massive vessels that seemed to be made of living metal, powered by engines that bent space-time around them. How long have you been building this fleet? Thekmar asked. We started construction over a century ago. Each ship is grown, rather than built, using biological engineering techniques that allow us to create vessels that are as much alive as they are mechanical. Dr. Kretak's scanners were detecting impossible readings from the approaching ships. Captain, those vessels, they're not just ships. They're artificial life forms. Each one has its own consciousness, its own intelligence. Each one is connected to our network, Elena explained. They share our knowledge, our purposes, our determination to reshape the galaxy according to rational principles. This is madness, HFY said. You're talking about conquering every species in the galaxy. I'm talking about improving every species in the galaxy. Conquest implies taking something by force for selfish purposes. What we're offering is advancement, enhancement, evolution to a higher form of existence. The display showed detailed plans for biological modifications that could be applied to every known sentient species. Enhanced intelligence, extended lifespans, improved physical capabilities, direct neural interface with technology. The humans had apparently spent decades studying the biology of every species in the Confederacy. You want to turn everyone into copies of yourselves, Dr. Kretak realized. We want to help everyone reach their full potential. The modifications we're offering are tailored to each species' unique biology and psychology. We're not trying to make everyone identical. We're trying to make everyone optimal, without asking if we want to be optimal by your standards. Elena's expression softened slightly. We've been monitoring galactic civilization for decades. We've seen the wars, the suffering, the waste of potential that comes from allowing species to develop naturally. We've watched brilliant individuals die of preventable diseases while their governments debate the ethics of genetic modification. We've observed entire civilizations destroy themselves because they couldn't overcome their biological limitations. Those limitations are part of what makes us who we are, HFY argued. Those limitations are chains that prevent you from becoming who you could be. Elena's voice carried a note of genuine sadness. Captain, your own species has an average lifespan of only 60 standard years. By the time a Veltar individual accumulates enough knowledge and experience to make truly significant contributions, they're already approaching death. What could your people accomplish if they had centuries to learn and grow? It was a compelling argument, and HFY found himself momentarily considering the possibilities. But the more he thought about it, the more... We're a better version of that species, Elena said. We've eliminated harmful emotions like jealousy, greed, and hatred. We've enhanced beneficial traits like curiosity, empathy, and determination. We've optimized our psychology for cooperation, learning, and long-term thinking. You've eliminated your humanity, HFY said. We've perfected our humanity, and we're prepared to offer the same improvements to every species in the galaxy. The energy readings from the planet reached a crescendo, and suddenly the space around the Harmony's edge filled with new contacts. Human ships had appeared throughout the system, using transportation technology that allowed them to move instantaneously across vast distances. How many ships do you have? Thekmar asked, his voice shaking. In this system? About 200? Across the galaxy? Several thousand. Elena's tone was matter-of-fact. More than enough to ensure that our message is heard and our offers are seriously considered. The ships were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They moved with organic grace through space, their hulls shifting and changing as they adapted to different conditions. Some appeared to be scanning the Harmony's edge with sensors that penetrated every molecule of the ship. Others were clearly weapons platforms capable of destroying entire fleets. Dr. Vasquez, HFY said desperately, please reconsider what you're doing. The Confederacy isn't perfect, but it's built on principles of cooperation and mutual respect. What you're proposing would destroy everything we've worked to build. What we're proposing will replace your flawed civilization with something infinitely better. A galaxy where every individual can reach their full potential, where knowledge is shared freely, where conflicts are resolved through rational discussion rather than violence. Under human leadership. Under optimal leadership, Elena corrected. We're not seeking power for its own sake. We're seeking to ensure that the galaxy develops in the most beneficial direction possible. Dr. Kretak was studying the human ships more carefully. Captain, I don't think they're planning to negotiate. Those ships aren't configured for diplomacy, they're configured for occupation. Elena's image on the screen smiled, and the expression was both beautiful and horrible. Dr. Kretak is quite perceptive. We learned long ago that rational arguments alone are rarely sufficient to convince people to accept necessary changes. Sometimes external pressure is required to overcome irrational resistance. You're going to force other species to accept your modifications, whether they want them or not. We're going to ensure that other species don't make the mistake of refusing improvements that will benefit them in the long run. Left to their own devices, most individuals will choose short-term comfort over long-term benefit. That's a limitation we've evolved beyond. The scope of the human plan was becoming clear. They intended to impose their vision of improvement on every species in the galaxy, using force, if necessary, to overcome resistance. They had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment, building the technology and ships needed to enforce their will across dozens of star systems. "Captain," Elena said, "I'm afraid your crew has seen more than we originally intended. That presents us with a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that requires a solution." The bridge of the Harmony's edge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of life support systems and the soft beeping of sensors that were frantically trying to track the hundreds of human ships now surrounding them. Captain HFY could feel the fear radiating from his crew as they realized their situation had become truly desperate. Elena's image on the main screen regarded them with what appeared to be genuine sympathy. "I want you to understand that we take no pleasure in putting you in this position. We had hoped to maintain our cover story for several more months while we completed our preparations." "What kind of solution are you considering?" Dr. Kretak asked, though her voice suggested she already suspected the answer. "We have 2 options to offer you," Elena replied. "Both have advantages and disadvantages from your perspective." The display changed to show detailed schematics of the Harmonies, edge and biographical information about each crew member. The level of detail was disturbing. The humans apparently knew everything about them, from their service records to their personal relationships to their individual psychological profiles. "Option 1, Elena continued, is that you join our community here on Kepler 442c as permanent residents. You would be provided with comfortable accommodations, interesting work assignments suited to your skills, and the opportunity to witness the transformation of galactic civilization from a front-row seat. As prisoners," HFY said flatly. "As honored guests whose departure would be discouraged. You would be treated well, but you would not be permitted to leave or communicate with the outside galaxy." "And option 2? Elena's expression became more serious. "Option 2 is that you return to your ship and leave this system immediately. Your navigation computers would be programmed with a course that takes you directly back to Confederacy space, and you would be escorted to ensure you don't attempt to investigate any other systems along the way." "That sounds almost reasonable," Tekmar said suspiciously. "What's the catch?" "The catch is that certain memories would need to be edited before your departure. You would remember finding a simple human agricultural colony that requested assistance from the Confederacy. You would have no memory of our advanced technology, our network connections, or our plans for galactic transformation." Dr. Kretak's antennae twitched with alarm. "Memory modification? That's a violation of the most basic principles of individual autonomy." "It's a necessary precaution," Elena explained. "Our timetable for revealing ourselves to the galaxy is carefully planned. Premature disclosure of our capabilities could force us to accelerate our operations in ways that might cause unnecessary suffering." "Unnecessary suffering?" HFY's voice was sharp with anger. "You're planning to conquer every species in the galaxy and force them to undergo biological modifications against their will. How could that possibly cause less suffering than letting us report what we've seen?" "Because controlled, gradual transformation is always preferable to chaos and resistance," Elena replied. "If the Confederacy learns about our capabilities through your report, they'll attempt to organize military resistance. That would require us to demonstrate our technological superiority in ways that could be unpleasant for everyone involved." The display showed simulations of what such demonstrations might look like. Human ships disabling entire fleets without firing a shot. Planetary defense systems being turned against the worlds they were supposed to protect. Communications networks being hijacked to broadcast messages from the Human Advancement Initiative. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" Dr. Kretok said with bitter admiration. "We've had 2 centuries to plan this operation. Yes, we've considered most of the variables and prepared appropriate responses." "Most of the variables?" Elena's smile flickered slightly. "No plan survives contact with reality perfectly intact. There are always unexpected developments that require improvisation. Your arrival here, for instance, happened several months ahead of our projected timeline for contact with Confederacy forces." Captain HFY was thinking frantically, trying to find some way out of their impossible situation. The human ships surrounding them possessed technology that was centuries ahead of anything the Confederacy could field. Their own vessel was completely outmatched, and the humans had already demonstrated their ability to control its systems remotely. But there might be one option they hadn't considered. "Dr. Vasquez," he said carefully, "I need to discuss this decision with my crew. Could you give us some time to consider our options?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." Elena's tone was gracious, but there was steel underneath it. "I should mention, however, that our escort ships are already moving into position around you. Any attempt to flee the system or send unauthorized transmissions would be inadvisable." The main screen went dark, leaving the Veltar crew alone, on their bridge, to contemplate their choices. "Captain," whispered Communications Officer Vrelnok, "I've been monitoring their communication channels. They're using quantum entanglement to coordinate with facilities across the galaxy. The scope of their operation is even larger than they've admitted." "How much larger?" "From what I can intercept, they have active installations in at least 50 star systems. And Captain, some of those systems are supposed to be inhabited by Confederacy member species." The implications were staggering. If the humans had been operating secret facilities in systems that contained other civilizations, they had been monitoring and possibly infiltrating galactic society for much longer than anyone had suspected. Dr. Kretok was working frantically at her science station, trying to develop some kind of countermeasure against the human technology. "Captain, I think I found something. Their quantum communication system requires enormous amounts of power to maintain. If we could disrupt their power grid, it might buy us enough time to escape and warn the Confederacy." "How would we disrupt their power grid?" "Their fusion reactors are connected to the planetary network through quantum field generators. If we could overload one of those generators, it might cause a cascade failure that would temporarily disable their communications." Thekmar was studying the tactical situation. "Even if we could disrupt their communications, Captain, we're still surrounded by hundreds of ships. There's no way we could fight our way out of this system." "We wouldn't need to fight," HFY said slowly. "We just need to get one message through to Confederacy space. If we could warn them about what's coming, they might be able to prepare some kind of defense." It was a desperate plan with almost no chance of success, but it was better than accepting either of the options Elena had offered them. "Dr. Kretok," he said, "how would we trigger this cascade failure?" "We'd need to get close to one of their power transmission nodes and hit it with a focused energy beam at exactly the right frequency. The problem is that those nodes are heavily shielded and protected by defensive systems. Could we use our ship's main deflector array? Possibly, but we'd need to be within a few thousand kilometers of the target. And Captain, the feedback from the cascade failure would probably destroy our ship." HFY looked around at his crew. They were all young, all dedicated to their service in the Confederacy exploration fleet. None of them deserved to die because they had stumbled onto humanity's secret plans for galactic conquest. But if they didn't act, billions of beings across the galaxy would be forced to accept human dominance and biological modification. Everything the Confederacy had built over thousands of years would be swept away and replaced with Elena's vision of enforced perfection. "I won't order anyone to participate in a suicide mission," he said quietly. "But I believe we have a responsibility to warn the galaxy about what's coming, even if it costs us our lives." One by one, his crew members nodded their agreement. They were explorers and scientists, not soldiers, but they understood their duty. "All right," HFY said. "Dr. Kritak, begin preparing the deflector array for a focused energy discharge. Thekmar, plot a course that takes us as close as possible to the nearest power transmission node. Vralnok, prepare a priority transmission to Confederacy Command. Include everything we've learned about human capabilities and their plans." As the crew worked to implement their desperate plan, Elena's voice came through the communications system again. "Captain HFY, I hope you're not considering anything foolish. Our sensors are monitoring your ship's energy systems, and any aggressive action would be met with immediate retaliation." "We're still discussing our options, Dr. Vasquez. I see." Elena's tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "Perhaps it would help if I explained exactly what we're offering to your species and others." The main display reactivated, showing detailed plans for biological enhancements that could be applied to Veltar physiology. Enhanced strength and speed, improved sensory capabilities, extended lifespans, and direct neural interface with technology. "Imagine living for centuries instead of decades," Elena said. "Imagine being able to interface directly with computer systems to access the accumulated knowledge of your entire species instantaneously. Imagine never again having to watch your loved ones die of preventable diseases or injuries." It was tempting, HFY had to admit. The improvements Elena was describing would solve many of the problems that had plagued Veltar society for millennia. But they would also fundamentally change what it meant to be Veltar. "Dr. Vasquez," he said, "what you're offering might be beneficial in some ways. But it would also destroy everything that makes our species unique. Our limitations are part of who we are. Your limitations are obstacles preventing you from becoming who you could be," Elena replied. "We're offering to remove those obstacles without asking if we want them removed, because we know that most individuals will choose familiar suffering over unfamiliar improvement. It's a psychological limitation that affects all biological species." Dr. Kritak had finished her preparations. The ship's deflector array was ready to discharge a focused energy beam that would hopefully disrupt the human power grid. The transmission to Confederacy Command was prepared and waiting to be sent. "Captain," she whispered, "we're ready." HFY took a deep breath. Once they began their attack, there would be no going back. They would either succeed in warning the galaxy or die in the attempt. "Dr. Vasquez," he said, "I've made our decision." "Excellent. Which option have you chosen?" "Option 3. Elena's expression shifted to one of confusion. "I'm sorry, Captain, but there is no option 3. We're creating one." HFY gave the signal, and the Harmony's edge surged forward toward the nearest power transmission node. The human ships immediately responded, but they had been positioned to prevent escape rather than to stop a suicide attack. The Veltar ships slipped through their formation before they could adjust their positions. Energy beams lanced out from the human vessels. But Thekmar's piloting skills kept them ahead of the worst of the attacks. The ship's shields flared as they absorbed glancing hits, but they held long enough for Dr. Kritak to line up her shot on the power transmission node. "Firing!" she announced, and the ship's deflector array discharged every erg of power they could generate in a focused beam that struck the transmission node's quantum field generators. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the node exploded in a cascade of released energy that spread through the planetary power grid like wildfire. Communications arrays went dark, defensive systems shut down, and even some of the human ships lost power as the cascade failure spread through their network. In that brief window of chaos, Vrelnok transmitted their warning message to Confederacy Command using the ship's emergency quantum transmitter. The message contained everything they had learned about human capabilities, their secret facilities, and their plans for galactic transformation. The transmission lasted only seconds before human countermeasures cut it off, but it was enough. Somewhere in Confederacy space, officials were receiving the most important intelligence briefing in galactic history. The feedback from the energy discharge overloaded the Harmony's Edge's power systems, and the ship began to break apart. Emergency klaxons wailed as hull breaches vented atmosphere into space. On the main screen, Elena's image flickered back to life as backup power restored her communications. Her expression was no longer sympathetic. It was coldly furious. That was extremely unwise, Captain. You've forced us to accelerate our timeline considerably. Good, HFY said as his ship continued.